Continues on the stump. We'll turn it over to Chris in New York.
Chris CUOMO here. It's the night to get real on NewsNation. This election has come down to a battle of the bases, and that is likely not good for you because there is no advantage to division for this country, especially right now. I was reminded of that today, as I'm going to explain in a moment, but let's be clear about where we are. The proposition is what scares more people. The notion that Kamala Harris is not just a socialist, that's to 2020. So she's a full-blown commie. This is about securing your freedom. And oh yeah, she also wants lots of males playing female sports. Or Donald Trump, not just a bigot who tried to thwart the Constitution once and now threatens to destroy the democracy. So oh yeah, this is about securing your freedom. Oh, and oh yeah, he's a Nazi. Now, that last piece, which is getting a lot of attention today, may be helping Trump perversely. No, not because we're overrun with Nazis, God forbid, but because people see him as victimized by such an extreme suggestion. Look, you may not agree, but those are the choices. And the latest example of the Thunderdome we're in, here comes the Trump Madison Square Garden rally, which has come down to one line for the media and the left.
There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there.
We are getting there. And the destination is the problem. Now, Hinchcliffe isn't what reminded me of how sucked into the game we are. So as I'm processing the MSAG as a Nazi rally proposition that the media was feeding all of us, I got a text from a friend asking me about Iran's Islamic regime executing Jamshid Sharma. Who? Iran executes German-Iranian dissident, 69-year-old, longtime U.S. resident, reportedly executed this morning in Iran after being convicted of terrorism offenses that make no sense. Jamshid Sharma. I didn't know that he was executed because I was preoccupied with Garbage Island Gate. So I Googled, and I saw, it seems, the father of a young woman I had on this show several times, promising to stay the course with her, promising that it wouldn't be forgotten. And now he's murdered by the Islamist regime in Iran, and I didn't even know. Do you remember her?
Today is the 1,228th day that the Islamic regime is holding my dad hostage. We don't know when they're going to pull him out of his solitary confinement torture chamber and hang him from a crane to die. As the daughter of a U.S. national that's been held hostage in Iran, who was kidnapped and taken there by force and has right now a death sentence, I am all for getting Americans back home. Don't get me wrong, I want every single family to come back. But why are we cherry-picking cases? At this time, any moment, my dad can be taken out of his solitary confinement cell, put outside, and strangulated to death, because that's the way they do it in Iran. They hang you from a public crane to show the world their power.
His daughter, Giselle. I sent her a text. I promised to cover it, and we will tonight. And that's when it hit me. Now, you probably see the obvious lesson as me being about to say, bad jokes, mean jokes, divisive talk, whatever it is, it's bad, but it shouldn't matter as much as we're making it when such other heavy stuff is happening. But see, that's not my takeaway. Mine is attacking Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, blacks, Jews, confusing Gazans with Hamas, any minority, tearing at that, playing with that, is actually really, really important, because it is exactly what is making us so weak. We are vulnerable right now, and we're vulnerable to the same people who killed Giselle's father. That's why Russia, not an enemy, but an adversary, whatever that means, and Iran, the head of the snake, and others who want us to fail love baiting our social media with exactly what we're boiling about right now. Now, as to the instant controversy, let's just say it plainly. Everybody knows the kinds of material Tony Hinchcliffe traffics in. The campaign can say his views are not Donald Trump's, but that doesn't wash, because that's exactly the message it sends when you put Tony as the headliner of a fund, not of a fundraiser, not of some sponsored night at a comedy club or at someone's private dinner. This was a major rally that is a showpiece and a closing argument in the last week of an election to be president of the United States. And like I said, Hinchcliffe is getting all the attention for the line about Puerto Rico, even though there was a lot of other talk at that rally that was just as or more ugly, and they were not joking. Watch.
Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president.
It's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that, a lampshade? That's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun. We carved watermelons together.
She is some sick bastard, that Hillary Clinton, huh? What a sick son of a bitch. The whole party, a bunch of degenerates, lowlives, Jew haters, and lowlives. Every one of them. Every one of them. Look at my city. Look at my city. Yes, this building is beautiful. You're all beautiful. Look at you. But you can't walk outside past about 10 o'clock at night here.
You also know the Jews have a hard time throwing that paper. You know what I'm saying?
You got homeless and veterans, Americans, sleeping on their own feces on a bench in Central Park. But the fucking illegals, they get whatever they want, don't they? 5-star hotels, cash, probably get Yankee Dodger tickets tomorrow night.
Yes, all three of those guys get paid to be provocative. Yes, that is true. But the anger, the grievance, is also a truth in this society. And look, I'll tell you what, I don't like that my own comments have been misconstrued. I would never, you people, black voters. I was talking about Democrats when I was saying that. Let's all be honest. Democrats weren't praising Kamala Harris 6 months ago, right? That's not what happened. One of the reasons they let Biden run for a second term is what? They didn't have confidence in Harris. Now you can't criticize her. She's beyond reproach. And if you do, you've been red-pilled. But the idea that that's supposed to be racial, I'm trying to isolate minorities, and I would never do that. I'm an ally. And if I don't act like one, then I'm sorry and I'll be better. But that's because being better matters to me. Being worse is what matters in this contest. Trump is all in on a manufactured culture war. He wants you to believe they are out to get you and ruin the country, and it is too often the case that they are the same groups the comedian and the others targeted. And before you explain away the rally, that wasn't him, those are other people, and these are issues, and you can feel either way. Watch this.
The newest line from Kamala and her campaign is that everyone who isn't voting for her is a Nazi. We're Nazis. He's Hitler. And then they say, he's a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi. I don't know.
That couldn't be farther from the piece of sound that I wanted. But let's talk about it. Calling Trump a Nazi is a mistake. You're playing with an extreme and ugly example, and you're making him a victim of it. And it makes people think who are not Nazis that maybe you're cheapening it to put one over on them. I'm telling you that's how it's being interpreted. Now, what I want to play is Trump talking about a friend of mine, a journalist named Anderson Cooper.
You saw her on the town hall the other night with Allison Cooper. Did you see? This is Allison Cooper of CNN. No, Allison interviewed her. She couldn't answer a question.
I got to tell you, this is even beneath Trump. It's wrong. It's as wrong as any joke. Anderson Cooper's a good man and a journalist, and being gay should not make him a target. You want to go after what he says or what he doesn't say, fine. But you can't tell me that that's not what Trump is about. And you can't tell me it's a joke. You make a joke like that. You make a joke like that. I guarantee you in your own life, you either love someone who's gay or you love someone who loves someone who's gay. Trump targets minorities of all kinds all the time, and you know why he does it. And yes, the left is all in on his being worse because of it. And while all the outrage about what was said about Puerto Rico matters, all right, I have Puerto Ricans in my family. And by the way, going after it the way they are may help Harris win by cementing the idea that Trump is just too invested in invective. But there's just as good a chance that you gave him all this attention about what does not take anything away from him. And it may help Trump win because he is once again dominating the dialogue, and the proposition of his being called a Nazi by the left is twisted into his being attacked by the radicals. Here's my point. No matter who wins, we lose. We lose if we come out without a mandate to move forward as a country. And I'm going to tell you, I don't even hear it as part of the equation. I have never seen two campaigns more insistent that the other one is an evil. Not a lesser, an evil. And I know it's the end of the election. I grew up in this business. But the end of an election is a time to be your best. And they are forcing us with their worst. So I can't disagree that it was really stupid to have that kind of rally this close to the election if Trump wants to expand the base. But I'm telling you, he doesn't want that. And the Democrats have also made a choice by spending this entire day and most of the last month going all in on Trump, basically being a Nazi, and Latinos and everyone else should reject him. But remember, you are now in a race of who is most outraged. And that may well be Trump's race to lose, meaning he would win. Because in a country as angry and worked up as this one is right now, adding to the fire, we're all going to get burned. It's cliche, but is it wrong? Let's talk about how Trump's grand finale may have been his final fail. Joining me now, I have never heard, I've known this guy 30 years. I have never heard Geraldo Rivera speak emotionally or using the language that the NewsNation correspondent at large is about what he heard there and what he believes the proposition is for people like him if Donald Trump is elected. Thank you for taking the time. I wish you were viral for something else, but this is the state of play. And why did this moment matter so much to you?
You know, Chris, because the fascist Hitler Nazi stuff is rhetoric, and it goes right over my head because when I hear liberals invoke that language, I know they're not being serious because they can't possibly compare a contemporary person, even Donald Trump as his worst, to those people, the Nazis and the fascists and Hitler and so forth. But Chris, there is no doubt but that Donald Trump has deteriorated into a racist mouthpiece. He is invoking language that is beyond the pale. And we turn the other cheek because we love him and have had great times with him over the years and, have watched him succeed improbably to the highest office in the world. But to hear him in his desperate quest for re-election, this improbable quest for re-election, to hear him say that migrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, poisoning the blood of our nation, as many times as you can say it, it still is shocking that Hispanic migrants have a propensity to murder that's in their genes. I mean, you don't want to use the Nazi stuff and say this and that, but this is absolutely unacceptable, intolerable, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And this is how he has changed over the years of his exile. He never, or very seldomly, and he would refer to it once in a while as he did in his inaugural address after coming down the golden escalator, and they're sending their worst and their rapists and so, and then he'd be quiet about it. He didn't talk about it for months, and then he went around and he was just old Donald Trump again. But now he has made it his policy, his intent, and his tactic to use this language on a regular basis, promising mass deportations. and to allow the vile-mouthed, hateful little punk to say that Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage. Damn you. Damn you. How dare you? How dare you? My father, one of 17 children from Puerto Rico. We're having a big reunion. I've gotten calls from half of them today about what he said last night. And there is absolutely zero credibility in the argument that, I don't know, we had this comedian and he went down there and went rogue. Who believes that? They knew exactly what he was going to say. Maybe a nuance here or there. Didn't he try out that joke the night before? Aren't NBC producers reporting that now? I say, Chris, that this, and you know, maybe sometimes I'm prone to hyperbole, but I believe that this moment will be the October surprise. Sorpresa de Octubre. This is it. That this man came up there and mortally wounded the Trump candidacy. At the very least, it will take the total wind out of the sails of the momentum that we have been watching over the last several weeks. This is a big deal. This really resonated in a way that was profoundly hurtful to Puerto Ricans and Latinos generally. Why would a Latino man stoop to this? To a vote for Trump is a vote against self-respect.
So, Geraldo, I've heard two things today, and you tell me which one you think is the more valid proposition. First one is, along the lines of what you're saying, they said it as a joke. They mean it so much that they laughed right in our faces about it, and they all laugh and tell us not to take it seriously because we don't really matter. I heard that. But I also heard this guy Hinchcliffe makes jokes about everybody. This is what he does. This is his humor. A lot of people think he's hilarious. Many don't. That's fine. But they're only talking about people who enter illegally. It's not about all Latinos. That's why so many Latinos may vote for Trump, we're told, because they don't like illegal immigration either. And you are justifying a tolerance that the American people no longer have. It's not anti-Latino, it's anti-illegal immigration. Which wins?
There's no doubt but that the Democrats absolutely fumbled, and that's too weak a word, destroyed their chance to fix the border by their inaction and their avoidance of controversy. The Democrats blew the immigration issue. Joe Biden, with his generosity, helped destroy any order there was on our southern border. Shame on the Democrats. However, when you take that and make the attack all about if these were Swedish people coming across the southern border, or Finnish people, or some other European people, you wouldn't use this invective, this reduction of a race of people. It is impossible to ignore the fact that the vast majority of these immigrants are Latino.
That's why Trump said, "Why can't we get more people from Norway and not these S-hole countries?" That's what he said.
That's what he said because he means that. Apparently he means that, and he knows that the way you motivate the Norwegians to vote is to talk about the other, talk about the browning, talk about take a disproportionate importance. I don't mean that in any substantive way. I mean in terms of sheer math, to the crimes committed by these illegal immigrants. Mm-hmm. Immigrants commit fewer crimes than citizens do. That's a fact. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. To use these tragic anecdotes to rally people to hate people who've never even seen an illegal immigrant. And here's Sid Rosenberg there. He's on WABC radio and talk about the homeless and the this and you can't. I was in New York. I just got back a couple hours ago. I have 3 children in New York. I have 3 grandchildren. New York is the same New York. It's the same New York. There's not bums everywhere and feces everywhere and the illegals living in 5-star hotels. It's so bogus. They are intentionally attempting to stir people up, to generate the hatred that you speak of so eloquently, Chris, and exacerbate the divisions in our country. And they're doing it at the expense of the Latinos and their cousins, the Haitians, about eating the dogs. J.D. Vance saying he made it up, eating the dogs, and yet the president says it. They know what they're doing. They are trying to motivate the deepest, darkest fears and hatred of people. They're trying to bring it to the surface and use that as the motivator to get Trump over the hump. And I tell you, this will be. Madison Square Garden, famous for a lot of things, including concerts that I produced for the benefit of the disabled, and many other wonderful, wonderful events. It will be known as the place where the Trump second presidency went to die, Chris.
Geraldo Rivera, you and I are going to live it together a week and a day from now. It probably won't be over that night, but it'll be great to share history with you. I just worry about the outcome, my brother. Yes, sir. The big town hall. Geraldo will be there. All right, 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Listen, the only thing more heartbreaking than the division is how invested both sides are. Both sides, and the media and me. Nobody's trying to make it better. Isn't that even more frightening? When we come back, let's talk about what the state of play is between the two parties. Two very smart people, okay, who know the state of both campaigns. Next. Week in a day. Closest election, everybody's telling you about that. At least 20 years. Might it be a blowout? Maybe. I'm just telling you. Whether it's the lines in Vegas, which are close, opening up a little bit towards Trump's advantage, but you don't know who's juicing the numbers and how. So let's talk about the state of play. You got Democratic strategist, former Obama campaign advisor who has been closely monitoring what's happening with the Harris campaign out on the road, Amisha Cross, and former Deputy Assistant Press Secretary for President Bush, Pete Seat. So, Pete, I start with you. How big a blow to the campaign do you believe this rally is?
Zero. And the reason is the incentive structure of politics and the incentive structure of society. Clicks, views, attention equal dollars, and they equal votes. And as you've been talking about on this program already tonight, Chris, fear is a motivator. Fear does not govern, but it motivates. It gets people to the polls. It gets them to cast a ballot. And let's be honest, both campaigns are utilizing fear. Donald Trump is focused on the fear of illegal immigration. Kamala Harris is focused on the fear of Donald Trump. We can argue about the degrees to which their rhetoric is employing fear, but both campaigns are using it because both campaigns know that's how they get people to vote.
One quick bounce, and then I'm coming to you, Amisha. But just when you say illegal immigration, I give you that as an issue. But him calling Anderson Cooper Allison, him allowing every minority group to get a punch, and not in the way that, you and I may have grown up where different kinds of ethnics give each other different kinds of jokes, but it's out of love and it's out of camaraderie. That's not what this is. So is it really about illegal immigration, or is it about they, Pete? And they happen to be everyone but you and me.
Yeah, with Donald Trump, you're either with him or you're against him. It's that simple. And should these comments matter? Yes. The question is, will they matter? The answer is no.
Amisha, how do you play how much is being made of it and what is being made of it on the Democratic side of the ball?
Well, I think that a lot that was said in your opening is, quite frankly, very correct, because at the end of the day, I find that there were a lot more offensive things said during that rally than just the one that most media has picked up, that the unfortunate joke that didn't come off as a joke about Puerto Rico. But I do think that the targeting of Latinos, the targeting of Black people, the targeting of women, the targeting of individuals across this country who are not wealthy white men has been something that the Trump campaign and Republican Party has been doing for a while now. He does it on Truth Social almost daily. He has not distanced himself from this. And in fact, we know that his campaign saw everything that was going to be said that night before it was said. Knowing that it's just a few days left out of the election cycle, I think that the Harris campaign is doing exactly what needs to be done. Pointing out, and they don't have to do a lot of work here, Trump literally does this on his own, showing his racism on full display. Last night was not a rally. Last night looked like, it sounded like the very things that my grandparents fought against growing up in the Jim Crow South, living there under that type of rule here in America. I hear a lot of conversation about how this is resembling something like fascism. And yes, we can say that, some people can say it if they want, but at the end of the day, a lot of what he's trying to do and a lot of what his policies look like come out of a page in America, not necessarily a page in Germany. So we have to be very specific here about who this man is. And the Harris campaign has done that. There couldn't be a better contrast than what we saw on that stage last night versus what we've seen from Kamala Harris, whether she is in Georgia, whether she is in Michigan, or whether she's in Pennsylvania. In America, that is one that's, believes in multiculturalism, believes in the values of our American system and our Constitution, versus one that wants to turn the Constitution on its head and literally round up people and take them outside of this country because he wants to get back to an America that's all white.
Quick follow. Amisha, do Democrats have as good a chance of winning an election about which side is more angry?
I don't think that this conversation is about who's more angry. I do agree with your other guests to a certain extent when you talk about fear. I think that fear is predominating this campaign. One is fear of an America where you can't go outside without being accosted or without having some type of racial animus and no civil rights protections available to you. The other is somebody who is literally lying on a daily basis saying that, immigrants, undocumented immigrants are coming, murdering your children, they're coming to rape your daughters, and they're coming to eat your pets. Those are two very stark contrasts. One is literally a fear to scare the hell out of suburban white women. And the other one is trying to say exactly what the policies of a Trump administration, a would-be Trump administration, would do, and emphasizing the scariness of the tactics of Project 2025.
Pete, are you worried that even if Trump wins, and, I know as a political operative, you're like, no, I'll deal with whatever comes after that. I just want the win. But are you at all concerned that if he wins with this kind of campaign, that you do not have a mandate? Not only is he lame duck because he can't run again, but you have whoever voted against you not wanting to have anything to do with you going forward.
No matter what the result is next week, that is a worry I have. And my standard answer for over a year now, when Joe Biden was still the nominee, to today, when people ask who's going to win, I have said, I don't know, but I can tell you America's going to lose because we are split right down the middle. We are an evenly divided country, and half of the country is going to be angry and angrier based on the result. It's just a matter of which half that is.
Amisha, isn't that kind of scary that these kinds of issues would divide this country? Didn't we always assume that this was the angry third? That there's a third of people who believe the earth is only 2,000 years old. Those people like that, you'd fit these in the same bucket. But now it's almost half the country.
Well, I would argue racism has divided this country since its founding. And what you find in Donald Trump and the Republican Party who lines up behind him like the Pied Piper is that they, too, are willing to continue to spread separatism throughout this country. Racism has always been the great divide here. And I don't see that changing anytime too soon, especially when there are people who are chanting the same types of rhetoric, who are sharing it, who are loving it across social media, who are still showing up to these rallies, which we all know what these rallies are. They're akin to KKK rallies of the Jim Crow era. This is bringing out, I think, the darkest sides of American history. And it's very unfortunate because in an era where our country is more diverse than it has ever been, and in a city, New York City, being the most diverse city in this entire country, watching him go up there and say some of the most disgusting things from anybody, a former president or somebody running, I think that it says something about America. It says something about our democracy that's hanging on by a thread when you have someone who is so gung-ho about separating us all.
All right. A week and a day, my brother and my sister, a week and a day. We will live it together. Amisha, thank you very much for the thoughts. Pete Seat, thank you very much for the thoughts. Appreciate you both. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, is Israel, this is a double block, okay? Israel, is it true that they're preventing U.S. aid workers from delivering what could be life-saving assistance to Palestinians in Gaza? Is that true? Arwood Damon founded Enora, my friend, major relief organization, Enora. If you want to give money to the people who are getting hurt, who are innocent in Gaza, go there. What's the reality? Now, this other story. A man was just executed, we're told, in Iran. His daughter has been on here several times. We were supposed to be with her. The execution hasn't even gotten a mention. We will find out what's going on, and we will discuss the implications for America next. I doubt you heard, but a U.S. resident who's a German Iranian national, 69-year-old Jamshid Sharma, was reportedly executed by the Islamist extremist regime in Iran. He was kidnapped and arrested 4 years ago by Iranian security forces. Some BS terrorism charges. His daughter Gazelle came on our show several times to plead for her father's release. Right before our show tonight, she posted this video on Instagram. She's silent the entire time. And she lists on it that she's going to be silent until she hears from authorities what was done, why it was done. Our beloved hero and father of Iran, Jimmy June, as I'm waiting in silence, our bond exceeds words. It is so sad. I'm sure she is searching for words, even though I hope she knows what an eloquent and effective advocate she was for her father. I want to bring in my friend who told me today that this had happened, and will now tell all of us why it matters and why we need to pay more attention. Elika Laban, you know her. Her family is from Iran. She is a lawyer. She is an influencer, and she knows Gazelle very well. Elika, thank you, first of all, for telling me what happened today. How is she doing, and what do you want people to know about why this matters in the middle of a presidential election?
Well, obviously she's in a state of shock. I think we all are. I think, the only thing we can do at this time is speculate, because nobody has given us any information, not even anything beyond what the regime has told us, that it has executed her father without even any confirmation. So all we can do is speculate. And the best we can think is that after these attacks, the IDF's attack on the IRGC military bases, it was clear that the US the regime in Iran had no intention of getting back into a nuclear deal with the US because of these attacks. Basically, all bets are off, all gloves are off. And so they kidnap people like they kidnapped Jimmy Sharmad to use them as political pawns. And he had been in a holding cell, in a terror cell for the past 4 years, ostensibly to use him as some type of pawn that they were trying to trade him off for billions of dollars, which didn't work out in their favor. And in the end, when they realized that a deal was no longer on the table, they decided they had no use for him. And so they executed him. I think it's also very relevant to note that the way the media is framing this right now, New York Times, BBC, of course, Al Jazeera, framing this as somebody who was executed over terror charges, where we've seen no evidence of that other than his forced confession in handcuffs and blindfolds. And so it's really irresponsible that the media is reporting on this as though this was a complaint that was filed by a US prosecutor's office, which would have some probable cause for making such a claim, rather than a terrorist regime carrying out its terrorist activities on spurious charges.
Right. What do you say to the American voters who you're watching the state of play between the two campaigns? What do you want them to know about what you think they should be focused on?
I think what they should be focused on is the fact that Hitler was able to commit so much of what he did because of this strategy of appeasement, which basically said that, if we don't do anything, if we just continue with diplomatic relations, everything will be fine. That was the basis for Hitler invading several European countries. And it's become more apparent than ever that the strategy of appeasement has deeply, deeply failed us. It brought us to October 7th, and it brought us to every terroristic event beyond October 7th. And so what we know today is that the Democrats' historic strategy of appeasement has been a colossal, colossal failure. And what we need to see is a gigantic departure from this strategy of appeasement if any of our lives are going to be safe from here on out.
Elika Laban, thank you very much. I appreciate your eloquence as always, and please send my best to our friend and let me know what else I can do. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now, to the other side of this equation, what's happening in Israel. Their parliament, it's known as the Knesset, either way, it's going to be wrong. That the new measure, this is something that we have to discuss. The organization that provides an estimated 1.9 million refugees in Gaza with the aid that they need to survive may have just been banned by Israel from doing that work. The UN Relief and Works Agency supposedly can continue to operate in Gaza and the West Bank as it has for 8 decades, but it can no longer cross the border into Israel. So you're allowed to be in the bad zones and doing what you're doing to help, but you cannot come to Israel. One, that's not the same as saying they can't help Palestinians, is it? Let's bring in Arwa Damon, the founder of INARA, International Network for Aid, Relief, and Assistance, INARA. If you want to help the people who are suffering on the ground in Gaza, this organization is one of those doing the good work. She joins us now. Arwa, thank you very much. What is your understanding of what this is about, and what do you fear the impact will be?
Well, Chris, the impact is going to be absolutely devastating because by banning UNRWA, which is the UN Relief Agency for Palestinians, Israel is effectively severely impeding UNRWA's ability to provide not just humanitarian assistance in a place like Gaza, but also in the West Bank and other territories that Israel occupies. And so we're talking about around 3 million Palestinians will potentially be impacted because you can't get to any of these areas without crossing through Israel or crossing through some sort of an Israeli checkpoint. It's impossible. So how are staff supposed to move around? How are any of the aid trucks supposed to reach the people that need them? And that is the great concern here. It's also important. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Well, I was going to say, it's also important to point out, how Israel's allies are reacting to this. The U.S. had already urged Israel not to take this measure. And you'll remember that I think it was a few weeks ago, the U.S. told Israel that if they did not work towards improving the humanitarian situation inside Gaza, which is the worst that it has been, arguably, since the beginning of all of this, that Israel could risk losing U.S. support. And then if we look at what the EU foreign policy chief basically said after this ban came out, he said that this is in stark contradiction of international law and the fundamental principle of humanity. And so really, when you look at it, it does feel as if Israel is just using another tool in its arsenal of impeding our ability as humanitarians to provide for those who need the assistance.
So assess their counter. The counter is, no. Arwa, you can do whatever you want in the bad zones. And we're still going to allow goods through. But you can't, not you, but the UN people can't come back from this one agency because too many of them have been found to have been working with or sympathetic to or both Hamas. And we cannot risk that right now. And I'm sorry, you do the work over there, but you don't get to come here and threaten us.
Right. So, the sort of strains and tensions between UNRWA and Israel have been going on long before October 7th. Israel has always felt as if UNRWA might, at the very least, be, complicit in some of these activities, which is something that UNRWA does fundamentally deny. And if we look at some of the allegations, Israel has said that hundreds of UNRWA employees are active members of Hamas and not provided any evidence for those claims. Now, UNRWA did launch its own independent investigation and actually got rid of 12 of its employees. But if we look at, the number of staff that UNRWA has, we're talking, 13,000 in Gaza, 4,000 in the West Bank, tens of thousands across all of the regions. I mean, is it likely that a small percentage of them did have nefarious ties? Absolutely. Yes. But also show me an organization where, 1 to 3% don't have ties to some sort of nefarious entity or involved in some sort of, lewd kind of activities. And so the argument is that, from the other side, at least, is that Israel is trying to prevent UNRWA from operating because it does view UNRWA, and this has been sort of the core of a lot of the tensions that have existed, as sort of perpetuating this idea of a Palestinian refugee. And Israel has always been against this concept, because then you get into all of the issues of, the right of return, et cetera, et cetera.
Arwa Damon, thank you. This is complicated, but you're stating the proposition for the audience, and I appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Let me know how I can help. I want everybody to know Arwa is also a storyteller, an amazing journalist. She has a new documentary called Seize the Summit. Seize the Summit, streaming right now. Arwa, I love you, and thank you. Stay safe. We'll be right back. All right, let's do a quick talk about a big development in the jury selection on this New York City chokehold death trial of Daniel Penny, the former Marine. I don't know why he is a Marine, but I don't know why we keep using it as a descriptor, as if it had something to do with his action. He's the guy who put a chokehold on a homeless man who was also being accosted by two others in defense of others, they say. John Neely is the man who's on the bottom. He wound up dying. Jordan Neely is the man on the bottom. He wound up dying. 6 jurors have been picked. Why is it hard? And let's take a look at the ones that they've picked so far. We have former FBI Special Agent Stu Kaplan. It's good to have you, Stu, also an attorney. Thank you very much for joining us. One, why is it so hard to pick a jury?
Well, look, Chris, New York City, one of the things that I think any New Yorker becomes akin to is really being desensitized. I'm born and raised in New York City. I took the subway while I was growing up. And quite frankly, what someone may be shocked to see if they come from some other place, which would really shock the conscience, you become very desensitized. I think when you take a look at the jury pool, meaning the 6 prospective jurors that have been seated, ironically, 3 out of the 6 do say to some extent they have been harassed or intimidated or in fear. And so that's an interesting twist. My biggest concern from the defense perspective is, do you seat 12 jurors and you kind of fall into the desensitized situation where the outrageous behavior, arguably, that was alleged to have happened, causing this individual to take a posture to defend himself and others, do they say it was not that extreme and maybe overdone? That would be my biggest concern from a defense perspective.
Yeah, but you're going to have a mix of witnesses. I mean, I actually look at this as breaking well for the defense in this, this early seating of 6, because one, they're going to hear from those 2 other guys in the video. They're going to hear from people saying, I didn't like what they did. I felt bad for Jordan Neely. But you're going to hear from those 2 guys who are going to say, we didn't think that we were doing too much. We certainly weren't trying to kill him. We didn't think that Penny was trying to kill him. It only takes 1 juror to believe that, right?
Yeah, no question about it. And look, Chris, if you go back and you look at the charging instrument, meaning the indictment where he is charged with second-degree manslaughter, that means that the posture taken by this defendant was reckless. I thought always, and by the way, I was on your show where I said that I didn't think he should have been charged in the first place, but I thought at best it should have been a negligent homicide, not a reckless indifference with respect to the charge.
Right, and negligence is the lowest standard of homicide as a felony, criminal negligence. We'll go through it as the trial begins. Stu, thank you very much. Stu Kaplan, thank you for laying it out. Let's see what they do with the rest of the jury, and then we'll see what happens with this case. We'll be right back.